Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. I hope you can all hear me. Welcome to this roundtable led by um, um, led led from the UAE this morning. This is a public diplomacy event. It's being presented by the delegation of the European Union and the German embassy in the United Arab Emirates. As most of you will know, Germany holds at the moment the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union. My name is Comfort Aero. I'm the Africa Program Director at the International Crisis Group, and it's a real pleasure for me to be moderating this session, the high-level session with some very impressive names, which I'll introduce to you shortly. The theme of this meeting, the purpose of this roundtable, is to focus on the stability of the Horn of Africa, a region that is going through an important transition at this particular time, and mutual interest by all sides, the European Union, Gulf states, our colleagues from the Horn of Africa, in particularly the Intergovernmental Authority on Development. And as I said, it's a really important moment to be thinking about the region. And the top line question, as you see from the invitation to all of you, is moving forward by looking back. How do we assist transitions in the new geopolitics in the Horn of Africa? And our panelists who are going to join us, they have three important sort of sub-questions to be answering in their interventions. One of the questions, and I put this also to our participants also, and welcome you all on board. One of the top line questions is what has worked and what has not worked in terms of transitions? How do we balance the interest? And as we know, there are various sort of challenging interest at the moment in the region. And the question to our panelists is, how do we balance, how do we manage those interests? And another sort of third sub-theme for our panelists is, how do we structure cooperation to manage competing interests as well? So we have, as I said, a great lineup of speakers, very high-level panelists and experts who are going to open with a 5-minute statement, and then will be followed off by questions and answers. The entire session, it lasts an hour, and we apologize from our side that we started late. So our panelists in the running order in which they will speak is His Excellency Dr. Honek Gebeyehu, and I'm very pleased to have you on the panel. He's Executive Secretary of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development. Our second speaker, and it's a real pleasure for me to welcome His Excellency Mohammed Al-Shamsi, who's the Director of the African Department at the United Arab Emirates Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. Third panelist, a dear friend of ours, His Excellency Alexander Rondos, Special Representative for the Horn of Africa for the European Union. And finally, also, it's a real pleasure to welcome onto the panel again, and great to meet you again, His Excellency Robert Dolger, Director for Sub-Saharan Africa and the Sahel at Germany's Federal Foreign Office. So I'm not going to go on about their biographies. You should all have them because we have limited time. Why don't I turn the floor straight away to Dr. Honek and ask you, sir, to focus on these three sort of sub-themes and the broader question of how do we assist transitions in the geopolitics in the Horn, given the position that you hold as a regional body in the region. It's sort of three important questions, particularly looking at lessons from Sudan, Ethiopia, and Somalia. I give you the floor, sir, and you have 5 minutes in which to sort of lay out your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, moderator. Good morning, colleagues, friends. This is a very important topic as a regional executive secretary for IGAD member states, because this is really, it is what about my own region, and a very interesting topic. It is not possible to finish all the things about the transition in the region, but let me mention not the history, but the actual things that is happening now. Yes, indeed, the region is in the transition, but the transition which some of the transition which we cannot or we cannot predict the end of the transition. Sudan indeed is in transition. After more than 30 years, Sudan is coming back to the international community. Democracy, end of internal conflicts, peace negotiations are going on. Indeed, Sudan is also in challenge. A sanction which hurted the economy, the people of the region, unemployment, and severe economic situation still challenging Sudan, while Sudan is striving to navigate on this positive transition route. In fact, a good news which we heard last week that removing Sudan from sanction from the list of terrorists. Somalia, really a country which yesterday we were talking the stateless, governmentless country. Now we are talking about the government of the federal Somalia, which is a positive development. And also we are talking about election. This is also another very important development. There is a voluntary return of refugees, but there are challenges as well. But the good thing that before that I have to mention is the negotiation which made between among the political figures of Somalia is a positive step. They discussed their own issue by themselves and they agreed the way forward, how to go to the election. So this is a good thing that the challenges are there. Al-Shabaab is there still. And also the point that I want to mention is the interference from outside. The most important point that I want to make here is the coming election of Somalia has attracted the eyes of different regional actors and international actors as well. So most of based upon the national interest of actors. Because of that, a lot of interference that we fear or which may distract the positive discourse of Somalian political process or transition process that may influence negatively. Of course, supporting Somalian transition is very important thing, but the challenge is interference and competition among the actors, conflict and competition, which we are witnessing now, and it is escalating upward from the region and out. Ethiopia, the transition is taking place with Spain. Ethiopia, the big country which have more than 100 million people, a lot of complex and complex cities. The transition still in fragile status. So we have to support this transition in one way or other way. The only solution that we have is democratizing the process, dialogue, and discussion among the politicians of that country will be very important. These all things will reshape the politics, the geopolitics of the Horn of Africa and the IGAD region. Vis-a-vis, we are also seeing some rapprochement and new development in the Gulf area, that the rapprochement of the Middle East, the Gulf countries with Israel, that will definitely also a step that we have never seen in our life. So this is also another very important development in the politics of the region. Let us see how this development will influence, impact our region. The COVID, the economic situation is there. The most important thing for this is IGAD is working in the integration of the member states. This platform is all about the integration of the member states, the economic integration. What now we are working on COVID, thanks to the European Union and other partners who are really came at the first time when we appealed to them to help the border areas, internally displaced peoples, refugees, and migration. So these are very important areas that we are working the solution is multilateralism, a regional approach to support this transition. Before I finish my short intervention, let me talk about migration, because European Union is here, the Gulf country, most importantly, United Arab Emirates is here, and of course, IGAD is here. Migration issue, the illegal migration issue is a very important thing. We, as IGAD countries, the Middle East, European Union are affected positively as well as negatively about this migration issue, especially illegal migration. People are dying the road. There are a lot of reports negatively impact the relationship, people-to-people relationship. I know that United Arab Emirates doing a very good job. They have a very good job policy. They're handling very well, but that is the point that we have to discuss. And I ask the moderators or the people to have such kind of platform to discuss the migration issue as well. So to conclude my intervention, the geopolitical situation is dynamic, flexible in Horn of Africa. A lot of events are happening. External things are influencing the region, but the transition, indeed, this region is in real transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hornek. And I'll now call upon His Excellency Mohammed Al-Shamsi to also provide his 5-minute intervention. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much for this is an important meeting, and Excellency, designated guest, Your Excellency Iskander Randers, the European Union Special Representative for the Horn of Africa, Your Excellency Robert Deleger, Regional Director for the Sub-Saharan African, Chairman Foreign Office, and Your Excellency Dr. Worker, Executive Secretary, Intergovernmental Authority on Development, and our moderator for today, Comfort Aero, African Program Director, International Crisis Group, of the utmost honor and respect to be speaking in your presence. I would like to begin with talking the team that has made this possible. The African continent has been of great focus, especially that the African region is considered research and has great potential. The fact that it is strategically located between the West and the East. In other words, as proximately to other continents, previously scholars views African as passive passenger on the road that ships the constantly following war award. We clearly witness highly active region with many complications. For example, we see the events with the Libyans interlinked civil war, the Western Sahara deadlock, and G5 dynamics are symbol of the African conflict, interregionalism with non-African regions, especially if we are talking about the sea contraction the Horn of Africa. The political and geopolitical transaction throughout the region is always influenced by the intervention of so many external forces with overlapping interests, which could stand in the way of program. For example, Ethiopian, the peace agreement between Ethiopia and Eritrea, signed on July 2018, conflict between both countries, which later led Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to win the Nobel Peace Prize last year. It is worth noting the United Arab Emirates host the summit in Abu Dhabi, the capital of United Arab Emirates, sponsor and pushing forward the peace agreement. Therefore, countries on managing peace and stability, the strategic area of the Horn of Africa. Unfortunately, the United States encouraged continuity of negotiation and dialogue between all to research in agree that take into consideration the all countries affected by the project. Uh, any uh, any tensions affect the region could undermine its security and stability. Uh, we're talking about Somalia. The current ongoing government breakaway where the current ruling Farmajo rule. The United Arab Emirates commends the effort of the international community and trying to ensure peace and stability and encourage the importance of continuity peace negotiation between the conflict parts. The United Arab Emirates strongly believes that Sudan also stability is control to the stability of it is neighboring countries such as Egypt and Chad, and the stability of the Red Sea region and the Horn Africa. I would like also highlight the importance of the Six-Juba peace agreement and hope that it is successfully won. Your Excellency and respect guests, to end my input, I would like to answer two important questions here. How do you balance interests? I would like to reflect on my country's views and start. The United Arab Emirates always support peacefully political and geopolitical transaction and encourage dialogue and peaceful negotiation. The other question there, how do you structure cooperation, the manage combating interests? The United Arab Emirates stresses the importance of approaching any change through peaceful political process which attend to the interest of the parts involved and creating political process to ensure stability and security. We need also here highlight. I need to thank you for this very important meeting. We need to listen what is the strategic. There is a plan strategic, or there is some few idea to working together to stabilization Horn of Africa. I would like to thank you very much again for this moderating, and this is important meeting. Please, the floor for you.
Let me now turn the mic over to His Excellency Alexander Rondos from the European Union, Special Representative for the Horn of Africa.
Well, good day to you all, and I'm delighted to be participating in this, and I'm very pleased that it is done in cooperation with the Federal Republic of Germany and the EU to be discussing this issue. I think both the previous speakers have raised some very, very important points, which I don't really want to repeat. I think if you're asking for some lessons, what has worked, it's not so much what has worked, but what do we need to really attend to in the months and years ahead as changes occur in the region of the Horn of Africa. The first is that, let's not forget, this is a region where we're seeing an entirely new generation beginning to emerge into the economic and political market. Over 70% of the population is under the age of 30, if not 25. This is a political and an economic reality. This has to be taken into account, and especially by those who are conducting changes in their own countries, whether it is Sudan, Somalia, or Ethiopia. People who get left out or left aside will react in ways that could be potentially dangerous, or they migrate. So I think that's one. Two, the reality is that these are three countries with economies that all have enormous potential, but they're nowhere near yet realizing the potential. They're burdened with debts. They have to go through, pay important debt service. We need to look at the issue of debt relief as related to how public finances are managed. And each one has to be, we need to support each country to be able to generate the type of revenue that they're capable of within, match that, and at the same time assist in the countries beginning to really distribute money within their own countries in a way that is fair and equitable, because a lot of the problems of the past have to do with people being marginalized. I think the third is political, which is what I'm implying. Whether you want to call it democracy or whatever, if the population does not believe it's belonging to a project that is a national one, their loyalties will go elsewhere. That is why, whether it's democracy or some form of deliberation, it is necessary. And Dr. Walken has just spoken about Somalia. We're seeing what's happening in Sudan. I think it is very, very useful that these efforts to try to build some kind of consensus begin to work. Now, I think my second point would be, and Dr. Walken has alluded to this, from our perspective as the EU, the Horn of Africa needs to and must develop in every possible way its regional cooperation. This is about economics. It's about transforming a region using its natural resources to the collective advantage of all. The dispute that has been occurring and the debate that has been occurring in negotiations over the River Nile, we hope can at some point be converted into a major economic development opportunity. A solution to that is an opportunity for huge investment to occur along the River Nile basin. Likewise, the coastlines can be developed. That leads me to re-emphasize the question of regional integration in the way certainly we've learnt in Europe to turn that to advantage. And I think Dr. Walken is right to raise that, but we must be all focused and collectively doing that. Third point, therefore, is related to the wider region and what you refer to as the structures of cooperation. What is very clear, and the EU back in 2018 came out very publicly through its European Council, stating that it wishes to encourage and support whatever cooperation could be across both sides of the Red Sea, meaning the entire regions on either side of the Red Sea. It is entirely natural history. It has been there historically as a relationship. How can this be improved and developed in such a way that trade routes are left open and secure, and that populations feel that they live in a stable environment? And that means we need to all work out how we can collectively work to look at how the Horn of Africa can be invested in so that its own populations can grow. I think there's still room to do more in that regard. And that means we need to have open, frank conversations among us to see how we can work together to make sure that we're looking at a region that becomes stronger and better, rather than just small parts of the region. And I think that's a key message that I think we would like to convey to all, and to extend a hand to cooperate among the countries of IGAD, the countries of the peninsula, and especially we're grateful to the UAE's participation in this, and of course we on the European Union. And these are the major points I'd like to make at this stage. Thank you very much.
And now to our last speaker, His Excellency Robert Dolger from the Federal Foreign Office. Thank you very much.
So what others have said, that there is a increasing interest of external actors in the region. That is clear. It is also clear that the region needs support for the transition it's going through. In the last years, we have seen the tectonic plates in the region starting to move, and I think we have, all of us have a responsibility also to shape this movement in a way that it provides security, stability, and development for the people of this region. But transitions are like sailing in the open sea. You do not exactly know where you will end up. And it's good to have a good plan, and a good team, and a well, so to say, thought out aims and objectives. If we go on to the practical side, just a few words maybe on Sudan as one of the examples on how this cooperation to support transitions can be shaped. And I would say, given our experience in the last 1.5 years, it shows that multilateralism works, especially when it's based on international coordination, on an inclusive approach, and also on a preparedness to take some risks, political and financial, by the partner. What can I refer to here is the Friends of Sudan as a central forum for international support for the political and economic transition, which has provided a framework for dialogue and cooperation between the partners in the region, including the Europeans, the US, the countries of the region, and the states of the Gulf. And I congratulate our colleague Al-Shamsi for working so closely with us in the last 1.5 years. So this Friends of Sudan served as a basis on which we were able to build the Berlin process with a donor conference in June 2020, which I think laid the basis for further support for Sudan to help it through its difficult times of economic reform. So yes, we are faced with a lot of challenges, but there are ways on how we can cooperate. How do we structure cooperation to manage competing interests? I think I would like to join Alex in this. We need a creation of regional fora for cooperation and cooperative security, indeed. It's also useful to bind in external actors and to channel and regulate competition to create win-win situations. Yes, mentioned GERD, I think this is a very clear example of the potentialities of such a system. The basis of this must be inclusivity and transparency between the partners that it will work. Also locally, we need to continue to work individually with partners and on ad hoc fora for exchange of views and mobilization of support and coordination of support, as in the Friends of Sudan. So just these few remarks for a start. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's really excellent, and I'm really grateful to all our 4 panelists for sticking to the 5 minutes for each of you, because I have an interesting lineup of questions that have been put to me to ask to you. So let me go in the running order that I have. Dr. Horneck, a question that I wanted to ask you, also based on your presentation, is how likely is it that we'll get sort of genuine-based dialogue in Ethiopia? Is it possible for IGAD, for example, to help steer a course for some kind of genuine dialogue to take place in Ethiopia as a way in which to sort of dampen down tensions in the country? Many observers, both within the country and outside the country, have called for it. But what needs to be done to encourage actors to talk? And another question for you is a transition. What is the path to get Ethiopia towards its elections? Well, just as you prepare your answer for that, let me put another question to Alexander Rondo so that he can prepare himself also. A question that has been asked in relation also to the news that came out this week on the lifting of the state-sponsored terrorism designation on Sudan. how do you see Sudan's role as a regional stabilizer after the lifting of the state-sponsored terrorism designation on the country? And that's a question that is coming from somebody in the audience. A question to His Excellency Mohammed El Shamsi is in relation to Somalia. One of the audience asked about the UAE's specific role in helping to bring around stability in Somalia. What does that look like from the UAE's perspective? We've seen for the past few years that there are sort of concerns about the nature of support and financing to specific groups and regions of Somalia, and concerns that that may destabilize the country going forward. And then the last question to His Excellency Robert Dolger in relation to migration. What do you see as the main causes which is forcing people to leave their countries and communities to move to other hostile regions? And particularly, just in relation to your last point, that transitions are like sailing into the sea. You talked about cooperation and transparency and inclusiveness. How can we get more inclusiveness and transparency from international partners in relation to helping to support the transition in Sudan? So, Dr. Hornek, why don't we start with you? Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much, moderator. Let me go directly to. Before I go there, let me mention two things. What that already mentioned by my friend Alex about the challenges that the region is facing vis-a-vis this transition. The course of democracy is not a simple process which we have witnessed in this region, in Africa or wherever. In spite of the internal challenges, the 2 points that should be mentioned here, specifically on Sudan and other countries, is the issue of sanction and also debt cancellation. The complication, the economic complication, which is exacerbating the democratic process, is really a point that needs intervention of multilateralism. That European Union, the German government, the Gulf countries, specifically UAE, the regions needs a support in these areas. The economic recovery really energize the political discourse to democratization in this process. So these are the two major points. The specific questions that he asked me about transition in Ethiopia and the dialogue issue. In Ethiopia, yes, there are a lot of political actors. The democratic process is opened and people are exercising their rights, even if there is a challenge as well. But this dialogue, still I believe that the country can manage a dialogue, talking to each other. All political forces who came the time of the change happened in Ethiopia. All opposition groups who were in diaspora and the dissidents from outside, they came back to the country. So this kind of combination needs a common platform and a common dialogue process. So definitely, IGAD is a regional organization ready to support countries if they need the support of IGAD, but most importantly, the country is in a position to continue this dialogue. But most importantly, the solution is dialogue, whether from the opposition or from the government side. That is what we encourage as IGAD. And also the prospect of the election in Ethiopia, Yes, of course, because of COVID and the political situation in the country, the election time has postponed. We are expecting the Prime Minister Abiy has already said the election is going to happen this year, European calendar, and also next year in European calendar. We are expecting that for sure. It is going to happen. But before that, this postponement of the election is not going to be a solution, but a continuous dialogue, a fracture inside the country that should be mended through dialogue and the negotiation. That is the most important thing. IGAD encourages this engagement, and the regional actors, the international actors, including our friends and partners, this is the area to support this democratic process in Ethiopia. So I know that the European Union, German, working closely with the regional organization IGAD with us to support our regional integration agenda. And also we appeal to the international community to see that indeed there is a transition. This transition needs support, a positive support, and to minimize the challenges, not to avoid all the challenges, but it needs really a significant support. Unless and otherwise, if we fail on this transition, if Ethiopia fails, or if Somalia fails from this transition, this region is going to be a theater of another catastrophe. So that is a very important thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And we may come back to you on some of the points that you raised, but I'm going to turn the floor over to His Excellency Mohammed Al Shamsi, please.
Thank you very much. This is important question about how to the Somalia and how to help the Somalia for the stability and peace. Really, the United Arab, we need to know where is the problem exactly. We need to know where is the problem in the Somalia exactly, or the region exactly. Two things of problem in Somalia from our view. One, it is the Somalian federal state leaders want separating from the current ruling Farmajo rule. The other problem, really, counter-terrorism. There is, we need the United Arab Emirates always comments the efforts of the international community to try to ensure peace and stability and encourage the importance of the continuity peaceful negotiating between the conflict parts. The other things we need to, the United Arab Emirates will do many with I know with the other international partners also, with other countries, with the community, with the international community. There is many projects for support the economy for many federal state to help the people to find the work, to find and support the economy for this country, because the potential is very high in this country. We need some management. We need to support him, command him, to work together with him, with sure with the Europe countries, with other partners. But United Arab Emirates have many projects there to support the economy, the Somalian economy. Maybe we need to know where is exactly the weakness in this country. I think we need all the community, international community, to trying to ensure the peace and stability in this very important country in the Red Sea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alex?
Thank you.
Great.
The question was about Sudan.
Yes.
The announcement of that the Congress may soon be notified of the lifting of the state-sponsored terrorism listing is absolutely momentous. We shouldn't underestimate the significance in that it opens the way for Sudan to rejoin the community of nations constructively, because it has so much to offer as an economy, as with its history, its people, and all. Now, what effect will that have in helping stabilize the region? First of all, what we're seeing in Sudan, which I find really impressive over the last year, and culminating not just in the announcement from the President of the United States, but the agreement reached in Juba. Here's a country that's been at war with itself for a long time, so much so that it lost a part of the country. South Sudan left. Sudan seems to be rearranging and coming to peace with itself. This is the main thing. It is doing so systematically. It is showing that it can do so for the moment through a type of cohabitation. The past and the future, as it were, seem to be trying to work together. So the first way in which Sudan can be stabilized is to simply demonstrate what can be achieved in the course of what is a very, very delicate transformation. And I think in the international community, all of us who are sitting, even talking among us now, have to do everything possible to contribute to Sudan and help it get momentum in what it is doing now. That is the key. To sit and watch and comment is not policy, nor is it politics. So this is the major point that I'd be raising. Sudan is the chair of IGAD at the moment. As it begins to move back into the normal relations and normalize with everyone around, so I think Sudan can make a very significant contribution, both with its own experience and in setting an example in the region. Because I think what we were just hearing about Somalia, Ethiopia, there is a need now to be able to show within the region that it is possible to make changes, and in a way where the different part, where the end state of all these transitions hopefully is one where people don't feel that they are left out, because the reason we've had problems in the past is that people felt left out in one form or another, whether it's generational, economic, ethnic, whatever you want to call it. So I think Sudan is setting the pace, quite frankly, and I applaud them for that. But then we ought to wake up and understand that applause is not enough. Action from our side, from all us, whether it is in the Gulf, whether in UAE, Europeans, the US, whomever, join in this. That would be the message I would convey back. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And then to His Excellency Robert Doge, I'll leave you the last question on migration before I take some more questions.
I think there are two driving forces for people, basic driving forces for people to move from their homes. And of course, one of that is war and conflict. And it is clear that people who are, so to say, hit by conflict and war usually move either in their home country to another place as become IDPs, or they just move over the border to the next secure place and become refugees in that country. I think you can see that very clearly, what happened in Darfur and also in South Sudan that was mentioned before. And of course, there is this big other issue of individuals looking for a better future for themselves. And these individuals tend to move cross-region. And so you need different answers for these questions. I think what I just can join Alex, what we said about Sudan, certainly the peace process in Sudan and the recovery of Sudan politically, economically, socially will lead to an improvement for the situation of the IDPs. So it needs a peace process, it needs a regional solution. On the migration flows, which are interregional or cross-regional, you need other solutions. And you can see sometimes how difficult that is with regard to the European policy. But it needs to be addressed, and I think the institutional structures about which we are talking, structures of cooperation in the region, should be dealing with, so to say, the issue of migration as well. To your second question, how to assure inclusiveness and transparency from international partners, I can only sort of point to our experiences in the Friends of Sudan Group and Partnership Forum of Sudan. You have to build trust in each other, and this takes time. That was the same in this case as well. And then you have to build a gradual consensus about joint objectives and the way forward. And you need the willingness of all partners to be transparent, including the host country in that case. So it's a process that takes time, but I think it shows the way it has been done in Sudan. It shows that can be achieved. It's certainly not perfect, but it is a very interesting example of how and as the international community, including the UN, the international financial institutions, the region, and partners from outside the region can effectively work together. Over to you.
Great, thank you very much. We've been given permission to overrun by just 10 minutes, given that we started late. So we will end at 10 past 12, 10 past in Abu Dhabi, so that we make sure that everybody also gets on with the rest of their day. I have been given a raft of very, very, very good questions, and they will all take time to respond to. So I'm going to sort of pick and choose which one I'm going to give to the panelists, and I apologize if yours doesn't come through, but we have taken note of them. To Alexander Rondos, you and I have spoken so many times in the past about the generational change in the region, and certainly you brought it up in your conversation again in your opening remarks. And I wanted to ask you, based on the question we have from the panel, from the audience, what Sudan and Ethiopia can teach us about the risks of ignoring young people's aspirations, including lessons that might be relevant beyond the Horn of Africa, especially in 2020, which seems to be the year of global shared discontent. So it'll be really good to get your sort of scissor size perspective on lessons learned from other places in which to sort of manage the aspirations of such a young generation. Another question, and I'll put this one also to Robert Dolger and also to Dr. Honek at IGAD. Both of you have talked about and emphasized the need of multilateralism. But when push comes to shove, Dr. Hornek, how much sway do you see for regional and continental initiatives, particularly regional in the Horn of Africa? And then to Mr. Dolger, with so many different overlapping regional initiatives, as well as from IGAD, and Alex also mentioned the Nile negotiations, where the Nile Basin Initiative can play a role, as well as the recent World Bank, EU Horn of Africa initiative, not to mention the CENSED, though that remains low. Do you not see the risks of all these multiple sort of instruments as undermining the role that IGAD could play to ensure greater regional cohesion and transition? And then the last one for you, Your Excellency, Mohammed Al-Shamsi, relates to concerns about the current US administration reported decision planned withdrawal of US counter-terror forces from Somalia. If that were to happen, in your opinion, what effects could that have on regional geopolitical dynamics in Somalia, the Horn of Africa, and the approach of Turkey and Gulf states, particularly, and European countries and China into Somalia, given the emphasis that you've placed also on in your deliberations today on Somalia? So why don't I start with Alexander Rondos, and then we'll give it to Dr. Honek, and then Mr. Robert Dolger, and then His Excellency Al-Shamsi as well. Thank you very much. Alex, you first, please.
Yeah, thank you, Comfort. Look, for those of us like myself who, of white hair and a certain age, we better wake up and ask ourselves why there is a rising generation which seems to be less than satisfied with what they have been served as their lot in life and with their prospects. So, I mean, you know, we all need to ask that question. So, two or three things. We talk about debt relief. Debt relief for whose benefit? Is it to a young generation whose future has been mortgaged, or are we going to pay off the mortgage for the young generation, not just whoever else made the debt? Secondly, there's a tendency, if I may put it really bluntly at the moment, to look at politics from, it's not so much democracy or not, but I would just say there's an illiberal trend afoot globally, even present in parts of the West. And I'm not sure whether this younger generation actually wants to be part of an illiberal trend, because in effect that silences them and their voice in the future. So when we think about how we program things, let me put it that way, it just seems to me the younger generation are not just a nice development project, they are the future. And we all who are sitting here discussing have to decide on which side of history we want to be, the imminent past or the emerging future. How does that organize? To what extent are groups, the younger generation, organizing themselves? How do we plug in with them? This is not to be subversive. It is just to look at the numbers and just say, where's the future? Who do we work with? Who do we engage with? And from there, I think we will begin to see something quite constructive emerge. When you look at Sudan and Ethiopia, younger people, this was not just a rabble, it was people who've been thinking, who took real guts to do what they did, and they moved to change things. The best thing one can do is help that generation learn how to govern, how to be constructive citizens in their societies, which means open the way for them to be engaged.
Excellent.
Because if they're disengaged, they will disengage themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Dr. Hornecht.
Thank you very much, moderator. To react on the issues that you have mentioned about multilateralism, in the perspective of regional approach, yes, multilateralism, bilateralism is good, multilateralism is better, especially in this highly connected region of us, the IGAD region, which we have a common threats and opportunities as well. The solution for the threats that we are facing is a common approach and collective approach. IGAD is doing this. I can mention some of the examples. COVID has shown us that no country cannot close the door or the borders, whatever. The COVID response of us, which is the regional response, which we intervened in cross-border areas of our member states, as well as in migration and refugee centers, shows that the regional approach is working. The peace revitalization peace process in South Sudan is also another manifestation of regional approach. We supported the internal process of peace process in South Sudan, which is now South Sudan. We can say safely that the president and the first vice president, they are in Juba. They were one time the sworn enemies who now leading one government. This is really, cannot happen in some of African countries. So this is the real manifestation of the regional approach or multilateralism. I can mention the issue of locusts that we are suffering now, which breeded from the Yemen, cross the Red Sea, came to most of these region countries, and the farmers are now crying. We're working together to combat this thing. with other regional organizations and international organizations, including European Union, who is supporting this very difficult situation that we are facing. The region is facing triple threats, that is COVID and locust and flooding, and as well as we are indeed responding regionally through the platform of our chair, IGAD chair, and our secretariat is working. So multilateralism is the best way to address the common problems and a good to boost common solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bonnet. And I turn the floor now to Robert Doyle.
Of the multilateralism under the eyes of Dr. Gebeyu. I just tried to count the number of multilateral organizations we have in Europe.
Yes.
So it's more than my hands, actually. So it's not necessarily a question of the number of organizations you have. It's a question of the mandate and the effectiveness of this organization. And especially looking at IGAD, I think you can see a remarkable transformation in the last 20 years. And it has responded to the challenges that were arising. So that is the key element of multilateralism as well. And one of the strengths of Sub-Saharan Africa, from my point of view, is exactly the presence and the effectiveness of regional and sub-regional organizations. So it's, I think they have shown also with regard to Sudan and the region, let's say can contribute and are contributing effectively to political processes and economic processes. So for us, from the German point of view, and I think it's also a policy from the European Union, we are very much basing our support, but also our cooperation with Africa on these organizations.
Thank you very much. And I'll end with His Excellency Mohammed Al-Shamsi.
I believe the troops' withdrawal strategic need to be planned in a way that it is not going to create a peace for forces that could have a negative effect on Somalia. We have seen U.S. troops withdrawal previously from the Middle East, which result in choice. I believe that before taking this step, they should be enhanced special incoming, economic and political support giving, and this could only be done through multilateral cooperation. We need put everything, because this is a very big step. We need coordination and cooperation. Make sure the economy, political support, everything in the ground. This is our answer, moderator.
Yes, thank you very much. Unfortunately, our roundtable has come to an end, and there's a raft of questions, and clearly these questions indicate the deep sort of interest that we have from our audience. But unfortunately, our time has come to an end. It's really been a great pleasure, and I do one big takeaway, and it's appropriate given that it's coming from given that this is happening. The roundtable is happening at the time of Germany's rotating presidency. The one key takeaway line from Robert Doyle is that this is a transition. Transitions are like sailing into the open sea, and the key is how we plan, ensure coherence in our objectives, and I think this is an important line, that partners are willing to take risks to help accompany these transitions. And what I've heard from all our four panelists today is the different kind of risk. The most important one, I think, in the partnership between IGAD, the European Union, bilateral members, and Gulf states. And I know that for many years, member states of the European Union, Alexander Rondos, and all of you on this panel have worked closely to think through about how to improve cooperation and regionalism, particularly in the Horn of Africa. To our audience, thank you very much for all the questions that you've sent to us. I apologize again that we couldn't answer all of them. You can listen to this recording again via the EU delegation and German embassy's YouTube channel, and the team will post that later. But thank you very much indeed. And it leaves me really to thank our high-level panelists for allowing me to moderate you today. Best wishes and do take care. Thank you.